Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Ready Up XPL with myself and Zach. And we got interesting, obviously, a little bit of change of scenery. We were both at the dojo right now, and because
Yeah,
of how the stream elements worked, he is out in the hallway, and then I am actually where Zach normally sits. But, Zach, how are you doing?
doing good, Jesse. How about you? Very different, but yeah, excited about it.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's been a great weekend. And for those Franklin people who were at Belong on Saturday, I was here. It was a great weekend, great seeing everybody, and we get to cap it off with a little bit of a live Ready Up instead of it being a coast to coast Ready Up episode. And first, we're going to talk about the Rocket League, and then we have a special guest joining us for Valorant and Overwatch. So we're going to start off the biggest game maybe of the season,
Yep,
up to this point, maybe in the entire regular season was the Franklin Storm versus the Irvine Dragons. Dragons have really been stepping it up recently. They've been shocking a lot of people,
absolutely.
and they played the Storm, who are obviously defending champions. And how did it go, Zach?
Yeah, it went as well as it could go, I think, for if you're a Storm fan, if you're a Franklin fan. Like you said, it was one that definitely was circled on everybody's calendars. I think if you're interested in, how this league was going to shake out over the course of this season, this was one that you definitely were going to be interested in. Uh, Luckily, we got a chance to scrim against Irvine the week leading up to the game, so that gave us a lot of great intel and scouting on, how this team likes to play. We know that they have a player just like Macomb, Dap Dap for Macomb, and for Irvine, Fuji, who is pretty legit. I mean, he's a pretty legit player. So we knew that we had to show up and actually, try if we were going to win. And thankfully, the guys all showed up and did just that. So it worked out pretty well this time.
Yeah, it was a great game to watch. You could tell Irvine they pushed you guys a little bit. They obviously it was a 3-1 win for the Storm, so they did get one win in the
Mm-hmm.
series, and I'm excited to see what Irvine's gonna be able to do because they're a team, and then we don't know still a ton about. I would say compared to the rest of the contenders, to
Yep.
trying to throw in the Storm. So as they get better week by week, we'll have to see what the playoffs can tell us, regionals as well. I would love to see what the regional bracket's going to look like if we are doing random or if we're doing it based off previous seasons. That could drastically change how these teams are looking going into nationals. So we'll have to wait and see how that
Yeah,
changes the
absolutely.
outlook.
And of course, too, the other thing is playing some of these West Coast teams. You're dealing with that server ping, that
Yeah.
ping issue. So that's definitely going to be something to watch as we continue on with the rest of the season. I know this time around, splitting it up, two East, two West, and then flipping a coin for round five, which wasn't needed, thankfully, this time around. Um, but definitely noticeable in those games when you go in with 70, 80, 90 ping playing on a West Coast server for the Storm. It's very, very noticeable. And the same for those Irvine guys, I'm sure, playing on our servers. So super, super excited to see those guys again in Orlando in June when we get to, that zero ping situation at LAN. So super excited to see how that changes things and, yeah, how the guys look all on that even playing field.
Yeah, the lane environment, it's just different. Like everybody, the same playing field. You got the crowd going on. I know you and I were paying attention to the Call of Duty League major that was going on this weekend. The crowds there were just immaculate. So can't wait to see what
Absolutely.
NEF has to bring in that regard. Going on, Macomb, they just keep winning. It's not something we're surprised about. They just keep winning games week by week. And I guess, what are your thoughts on them right now about as we actually hit the midway point in the season?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's great to see them bounce back. Of course, we know last week they fell to the Irvine Dragons, the team that the
Yeah.
Storm faced this week. So we knew Irvine was going to be a good team, but they really put the entire league on notice last week. Upsetting Macomb. Um, so really good to see Macomb bouncing back. I know they had all their players back this week. They didn't have them all fully on the roster against Irvine, so all the guys back on the team, and yeah, they took care of business this weekend. So we're looking forward to seeing them, for the Storm this upcoming weekend, and for the Stealth following in week 6.
Yeah, back to back game. And not back to back, but two out of the final three games from Macomb against Franklin teams. Both going to be classics, I have a feeling, as both Franklin teams are hitting their stride. And talk about stealth, they hit their stride right after the bye week. They looked great against Madison, which that's a huge win for them to continue building that momentum. what are their expectations now for you? Because when we first got them into the Gold League, we weren't sure where they were going to sit. And now
Right.
with Conway joining us, and you have Levi coming back, or Icy Fire coming back this season, it looks like a completely new team.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's a major kind of hit the refresh button moment. I know if you think back to that winter season when we first bumped Stealth back up to Gold League or up to Gold League for the first time, that first season pretty rough,
Yeah.
pretty rough. I think we finished 0-5 with a bye week, so not the way you want to start jumping into the Gold League, but um, the schedule was just really really tough that season. All the guys, the level of play, the pace of play jumping into the Gold League, totally different. But yeah, like you said, getting Panwy, uh, having Icy Fire rejoin the team, um, it's really changed the look of this team, and they're looking really well. I think as far as expectations go, like we talked about at the beginning of the season, this is one of those bubble teams. I mean, we talk about S tier being the Franklin Storm. They just have shown that no one is really on their level. Um, but the question really is who is going to be there at the end to compete with them, and you have to consider the Stealth as one of those two or three teams there with Irvine and Macomb and potentially Hanover as being that next team up. To challenge the Storm. So yeah, the expectations are super high. The guys are all grinding. They're practicing just a ton, and yeah, the road ahead is tough. But these guys are looking forward to winning these last couple of games and trying to see the Storm in the season championship.
Yeah, seeing the Stealth and the Storm at a championship game would be crazy. Like, to think that, as you
It
said, the
would.
Stealth 2 seasons ago, winless. 0-5, had a rough schedule, had a rough start. Now they're looking like one of the teams that could at least challenge and push the Franklin Storm in a title game. So it's a huge turnaround, and one of the key members of that turnaround has been Spooky Yogurt. He has really turned it on recently. As the coach, what have you been seeing differently from him and the rest of the team?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, it just works out perfectly. Spooky has looked very spooky this season. He, of all the players on all the teams that, get the opportunity to coach, he's one of the guys that's grinding the hardest. He's putting in so much time into the game, so much commitment to improving and getting better. Um, I know I've gotten a chance to do, probably a dozen one-on-ones now with Grant, and just the amount of improvement that he's gone through over the last 2 or 3 months have been just nutty. He's committed to getting better, and maybe for the first time in a real game, we got to see it this past Saturday against Madison. He stepped up. I think he MVP'd two, if not all three of the games. And yeah, he absolutely carried. And yeah, we're super excited about his improvement and looking forward to seeing what he does for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and it's a tough rest of the regular season for them. They have Macomb, Hanover, and Irvine in these final 3 weeks. How is that from your point of view? Because the hardest schedule by far in the league, because they already played the Storm, they already played Madison.
Yep.
So now they're getting ready for this stretch of the three other teams that they haven't played yet that are contenders with them in that bubble. How are the guys getting ready?
Uh, Excited, I think, is the biggest thing. Just excited and just really just looking forward to the challenge. I mean, we know this is not the end of the road, right? So, um, getting a chance to face some of these tough teams now is exactly what you want, really. I mean, of course, you want to win every game that you possibly can and try to win season championships and stack those up. But this is the time right now that it's good to go through this gauntlet of teams because you're going to see them again. I mean, you're going to see them here at the end of April in regionals, and you're going to see them in Orlando this summer. So the team is really excited to face some of these guys right now and seeing where we stack up and knowing what we need to change going forward in order to be able to compete with the Storm and some of those other like A-tier teams. So definitely a tough road ahead. Three very good teams. I know we've seen them in scrims. We've seen them play against the Storm. These guys are no joke. So it's going to be a tough road, but we're looking forward to getting out there and just doing the best we can, competing week to week.
Yeah, I think that's been the motto of this stealth team, right? Like, get out there, compete, and we'll just see what happens. And especially lately, it's just been all good things, time after time. And I guess one final thing before we head to a very quick break so we can get our guest in here. Expectations for the rest of the season for your two teams. Where do you see the records ending up for the Storm? I have a feeling what it's gonna be for the Storm, but what do you think it's gonna be for the Storm in the
Yeah,
South?
yeah, of course. So yeah, starting with a storm, right after we took down Irvine this past week, it seemed like they were going to be the one team after beating Macomb last week, the one team that was going to be there, to offer a challenge, to offer a push, some resistance against another storm, perfect season, um, and it came, but it wasn't successful. So there's really no way that I could see the Storm losing at this point. We have Macomb this weekend, and then one more game the following week. So I think fully expect another 6-0 Storm run and hopefully another 9-0 Storm run as they go on to take the season championship. But like you said, stealth, that's the tricky one to see. And they have that bye week in there, so that throws the numbers off a little bit
So
because they're
they're
going to
one
only
and one
have,
right now. Yeah.
right, 1-1 in week 3. So I think just based on the skill level of where everyone's at right now, I think we probably go 3-2 against Macomb, 3-2 Hanover, and 2-3 against Irvine. One game short. So we end up 3-2 on the season.
Which that ain't bad, especially let's see how playoffs kind of present themselves. If you're over 500, you're in a pretty decent spot. Obviously, the bye week, we'll have to see if it helps them or hurts them. It's kind of gone both ways for bye week team and teams with the bye week in the past. But we'll have to wait and see what the fate is for the Stealth and how they can
Yeah,
compete in these final weeks.
right. Wherever you end up as far as seeding goes in this season's bracket, it's going to be a tough road ahead. I mean, if you finish in that, bottom spot, you're going to get the chance to face Franklin Storm week 1 of
Yep.
the tournament. So that's going to be rough. But even finishing in those last couple of spots in the middle of the road, these middle tier teams in the Gold League are just no joke. I mean, there's not much parity between them. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting. So yeah, looking forward to finishing 3-2. Hopefully 4-1. We can find a way to take down Irvine, and then find a way to make our way through the tournament and see the Storm in the season championship.
Yeah, I think I'm very excited. I'm with you. Probably 3-2, 4-1. That Irvine game is gonna be huge. I think if they win those other games, momentum may be on their side at that point. But we'll just kind of have to wait and see.
Yep.
Thank you, Zach, for coming on again. And after this break, we're gonna have our special guest joining us for the Overwatch and Valorant segment. So stay with us. Welcome back, everybody. And now we're going to go and talk to Overwatch. We're going to go on to this Valorant later on. But joining me now is my co-caster. It's Colin, aka Glassman. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be on the show.
Welcome on. It's great having you in. And, get to talk about some Overwatch and a little bit of Valorant as well near the end. So, first up, Valkyrie. They look a little bit different. We had Mexicano, who has been with this team for a been around Franklin XP League for a very long time. He's had to step away as other things have come up with scheduling conflicts. So we have Andrew coming in from the Valorant team as well to play flex support. And they looked very good in their first real test of the season a week ago, not this past Saturday. They 3-0'd the Franklin, and 2-0'd, I should say, the Franklin Nomads. Map 1 is very close. Map 2, maybe not so much. So I guess from your perspective, how did you see that game, especially as someone from the Shogun?
Without Nomads?
Yeah.
I think it was interesting. I feel like it was... The Shogun didn't really know how that Nomads Val... I don't want to say dynamic, but I guess dynamic. How that would kind of go. We didn't know which team was better. I mean, we've played both of them in the past in practices and stuff. We haven't played them in official games, not in a while at least. But I was definitely curious because it was interesting to see how that game went because they're new to the Gold League and we didn't know how they kind of transitioned. But it seems like they've done incredibly well for their first Gold League season, especially with Yago being that DPS. He's been kind of carrying that DPS line. It is sad that Elliot has had to step away, though, for a bit. But it does look like they are doing well still, as you saw in Week 3's game.
Yeah, they played extremely well the other day, and now they are 3-0. They are one of the 2 undefeated teams left. Aside them is the Hanover Horde, which that is not a shock to many people. But they do play later in the season as the Valkyrie. They do a pretty rough schedule the rest of the way, right? Because they play the Hanover Horde later on. They also play the Franklin Shogun later on this season. Even as well as their season has gone on, how do you see those final 2 games in the final 2 weeks of the season going for them?
Well, I mean, I forget who they play.
They play Horde in week 5 and then Shogun week 6.
Who did they play week 4?
It's a team they're probably going to beat. I'll put it that way.
Okay, fair enough. I think this is going to be really a rough end of the season because they're going up against Shogun and Horde, or Horde and Shogun technically. It's going to be really rough. I think they go 4-5 at the end. Not 4-5.
4-2.
4-2. Yes, 4-2 at the end of the season. And there's nothing against the Valkyrie, but losing Elliot as your DPS, you don't have that kind of any chemistry anymore. You don't have any of that kind of ready to go, and you're going up against a tough second half of the season. And I don't think the Valkyrie can beat the Horde yet. If the Shogun can, I don't know if the Valkyrie can. And I am curious to see how the Valkyrie play against the Shogun. Obviously, that being my team, but I do think they go 4-2 at the end of the season.
Yeah, 4-2. I honestly, for them, still would be a pretty good season overall. And I'm kind of with you. Horde, I think, is gonna be a very rough game. I just don't see them challenging them yet. The Shogun will be a very telling game of where they are and where the Shogun are compared to everybody else. And I don't know. Time will tell on that one. I am horrible at predicting things, as we found out on this show, so I'm not going to try and predict that game, as it is also in a few weeks away. So we'll be able to hit that better later on. And because there's not too many big games in Week 4, we're going to jump ahead to Week 5. Because there's plenty of good games in Week 5. The Marvels versus Nomads, Horde versus the Valkyrie, like we just talked about, and the Shogun versus Hanover Horde B, aka the Hanover Heroes from the previous seasons. So first, going over to the Marvels versus Nomads. Going in, these teams know each other. These teams have played each other plenty of times in the past. Madison always seemed to get that sliver just over the Nomads. It's usually 2-1s. Both teams looking pretty consistent this season. How are you looking at that game? As both teams, they both teams have lost already up to this point, which for them are a little bit weird, but they're still looking pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, that is. This is going to be a really interesting game. Because the Nomads, they've had an upgrade.
Yeah.
I mean, they have had that new tank in terms of Elliott. There's more chemistry there in terms of just how that team works now. Obviously, Elliott is still a little bit nervous moving up into gold, into a pretty good gold team as well, which is it's obviously a step up. But that's 2 weeks away, so you still have that time to kind of build that up. But this week, that game for the Nomads is going to be so important to really tell where they are in terms of rankings, but also the main thing the Nomads need to win this game is good comms and ultimate usage. The last time they lost Junkertown, which was map 3, to bad ultimate usage, where they committed ultimates even after the point was capped immediately afterwards, and they just couldn't stop third point because there was no way they could counter like 4 or 5 of the ultimates that the Marvels ended up having going into that last fight. And it hit them really hard. There was no way they could really counter that. They kind of shot themselves in the foot. And that's going to be a huge factor going into this game.
Yeah, it's going to be maybe one of the closest games we've had all season, I think. As they've historically already been close. And I think the Nomads have started to close that gap even more this season. So that's going to be a very good game. We've kind of already hit upon the Hanover Horde versus Franklin Valkyrie game, so we're gonna skip that for now, and we're gonna go over to Shogun versus Horde B. I think this is more of a game to see where Horde B sit more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, did we see this in the preseason?
Yeah, you guys played them in preseason.
Yeah, and no offense to Horde B, I mean, we have the most respect for you guys. You didn't make an NAF last year, and hopefully you can make it again to NAF, but it didn't go well. And this is kind of seeing how much they've improved since this season. I mean, I feel like the Shogun have definitely improved since then. I mean, we've definitely kind of gotten it together a little bit more, gotten on the same page. But how will the Heroes, or the Horde B now, match up to that? Because we don't really know how that's going to go. Like, we don't know what they've done to improve. Yeah. And they're still on that upper half for sure, but this game in particular, it's not necessarily going to be about who wins, but about how far both teams have come along.
Yeah, I think that's honestly a perfect way to say it, as where the Shogun really improved over these last few weeks since losing to Hanover Horde A, and where the Hanover Horde B team really been able to improve over these last few weeks, as I believe they had, compared to last season, they had 1 or 2 roster changes, so maybe just getting that chemistry back together is what's been holding them back. But, you know, Coach DJ over there in Hanover, he knows what he's doing. Like, he has 2 of the better teams in the league, so you just got to trust the process if you're over there and kind of see where the rest of this is going to go. And then we have Franklin Valkyrie versus Franklin Shogun. This is jumping ahead to week 6. But we wanted to talk about it because it is a very big game for this location. Franklin Valkyrie have looked, as we kind of talked about already, very good. But right now, they're the number 2 team in Franklin, or they're in that top 2 discussion with the Franklin Shogun. This would be an interesting question to ask you because you are in the Shogun, but how are you guys looking at that game?
I mean, we're definitely looking forward to that game. I mean, it's going to be definitely a test of skill. We did practice, I think, last week against each other, and the Shogun did end up winning that practice, but we're not skipping the Valkyrie. Like, the Valkyrie, we understand, is a good team, and I'm definitely curious to see how they perform in this game, because I do think there is a shot that they have a chance at winning, and we're definitely not putting them out of the race, but I do think, as we said earlier, I don't think the Valkyrie win this time, if they win at all, because it's just, I think right now it's just too far of a gap. They still need that chemistry a little bit. But they do I think they go into this postseason 4-2, which is a little bit rough compared to those upper half teams, but I think they're still in the race for a long postseason run.
Yeah, I agree. I think for them, it's just how quickly they continue building that chemistry, because the Shogun, other than having Dario Magic join, they've all played with each other before. It's 5, 6 of that NAF runner-up team, so they have that chemistry. Yes, they're trying to bring Demon Ninja, aka Ryan, back into the fold a little bit after he had a few seasons with the Nomads, but it's still everyone who's played with each other in the past. You're gonna have that chemistry still. So I'm very curious to see. If I had to guess, probably 2-0 Shogun still, but I think they're very contested. I don't. The scoreline is not going to correctly stay how close the game is.
Yeah, I think in those maps you're gonna have a lot closer results than what you see. But I'm very curious to see how Dar versus Yago in the actual
Brotherly rivalry,
gameplay.
yeah.
Yeah, like that. I do think a lot of it comes down to that. I mean, I do think Shogun still win, but I'm very curious to see how Dar and Yago perform in closer games, because we've seen Dar in the past absolutely pop off with his Widowmaker and some of his Hanzo, just some of those performances. He's played so incredibly well, and he's a welcome addition to Shogun. But Yago is a DPS that honestly Shogun are trying to figure out what can we do to stop him, because that's going to be a big win condition for that Shogun team. You're going to have to find a way to stop a honestly good DPS line, even with Elliot gone. It's still honestly a really solid DPS line.
Yeah, it is going to be a match to watch. Make sure you watch that when it happens in a few weeks. We'll talk about it again on the show as that match gets closer. We're going to quickly touch on Valorant, as they had two sides of the coin for this weekend for Franklin Valorant, for Valorant as a whole. Franklin Wolverines, they're scary. And I know they lost to Madison Marvels in the postseason last season. But with Griff in and Remorse as well, this team's turned it up from 9 to 15, in my opinion. Even without Griff this weekend, who is playing in a different tournament, they got a 13-0 win after a huge 1v3 clutch from Remorse. And I struggle to see the faults with this team. There's still a little bit of communication issue. I think it's their biggest worry so far. But their duels and their gunplay has been carrying them so far.
Yeah, and honestly, one thing that people don't really touch on a lot is their utility usage, their ability usage, and ability to get value out of that. I mean, Beckett, he's running a lot of controllers, or a lot of people who can use smokes to their advantage. But we've also seen him kind of pick up the little bit of KO as well. We did see that last season's championship, and I'm curious, especially with the Yoru buffs. I don't think Beckett necessarily plays Yoru, but I'm very curious to see how, when that comes out, that's not coming out immediately. I think that's going to be in a few weeks.
Yeah.
How teams are going to play that, especially since a lot of changes, especially to the controllers, which is a lot of how the Wolverines get their value. I'm very curious to see how that shakes up the meta going into these next few seasons. As the Wolverines, they definitely look scary.
Yeah, I think it's them and Madison on top, and I think it's everybody else chasing behind. I don't believe they play each other in regular season. I have to double check, but if they don't, playoffs is going to be a very fun time, and I'm going to leave it at that for the Wolverines. Final thing with us, Franklin Tsunami. Garland's also on that team, so we got to talk about it just a little bit here. We might as well take advantage of one of their players being here. We kind of knew going into the season this was a work in progress team. It was going to be a lot of improvements to be made, and I think slowly but surely they're making it. They've had a pretty tough draw on who they're playing. They had Triangle Minotaur this week, and they had to play them again next week. 1-13 loss, but a lot of improvement from you guys.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like as we go on, I feel like we definitely need to work on a lot of things, but I do think some games are accomplishable. I think next week, I don't know if we win necessarily, but I think it's going to be a little bit closer, because we've definitely been working with our players to make sure they are aware of what's going on. And I don't know, I don't think Ascent is the map pick for the Tsunami, as we've played it 1 or 2 times and it's not been very good for us. But we're definitely working on improving, or at least some of us are for sure. So I'm very curious to see how we go into the postseason, I think, is where we'll be our best in this season.
I think that's when you're going to shine as well. Again, we'll have to wait and see how that goes. As we do hit the halfway mark in this season. That's going to be it for us tonight, but we got a little something extra. It'll be on our YouTube channel that has been newly created. It'll be coming out, I would say, in the next few days. At some point this week, it'll be an interview with myself and Colin here, conducted by that Tennessean, a.k.a. Coach Zach, we talked to earlier today. That'll be up on the YouTube channel later on. But for myself, Colin, Zach from earlier on, have a great night, everybody, from Franklin, Tennessee, and we will see you guys soon. Have a great night.